Hurts lost it for Smith. It's a touchdown. Devontae Smith.
Bijan Robinson. Give him the ball. Touchdown, Texas. He's got room. Lamar Jackson. Open field. Inside the 20. He is in. Lamar. Spectacular.
Welcome back to the Saturday Air Raid, part of the NFL Lab Network. I'm your host, John Roberts, and today with me, as always, my two good friends, Dan O'Connell and Brad Bolt. How are we, gentlemen?
Excellent. The season's almost here. It's almost time, guys. We're almost ready for football to start.
I cannot believe Hall of Fame game is next week.
The Hall of Fame game's next week. Oh,
yes.
it is.
And degenerates like me, yes, I will be having a bet on the Hall of Fame game. Let me just see the over-under.
There could be a show about coming soon where you talk about it.
That is true. Oh, man. Dorian Thompson-Robertson over... What am I going to go? Over passing yards. I might even go Strebler over rushing attempts as well. We'll see. But that's not what this show is about. As excited as we all are with training camp happening and all of that. Today we're doing running backs. We're doing college running backs. We're looking at the draft ahead, the 2024 NFL draft, so draft eligible. Actually, that's a good point. We didn't actually discuss this. Now, Dan, are all of your running backs that we're going to discuss today, are they draft eligible?
They are, yeah.
Okay. I
made sure they were because as far as I'm concerned, there's probably the top two backs in college aren't actually draft eligible next year.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So having said that, so let's just at the top of the show, Quinton Junkins. If he was in this class, would he be number one?
I think so. I actually think he's over Nicholas Singleton, and I think he's over every single one of the running backs in this class.
Out of Ole Miss. I'm glad you said that because for me, he was as well. I think that he's probably going to become one of these Zeke, Saquon, Bijan types. We'll see how he goes this season. It all depends on this season, of course, and next season for him.
He come out and put up over 1,500 yards as a true freshman. Like, that's crazy numbers.
He is nuts. Okay, so I just want to... So, hey, in a year from now, you'll look forward to us talking about Quinton Junkins, but that is not what we're talking about today. Today, we're going over our draft-eligible 2024 college running backs that we're looking forward to this season. I prefaced on the show last week when we were talking about quarterbacks that this might have been a shorter show, and then when I actually dug into all the film and all the tape on all these running backs, I'm not so sure about that anymore.
There's a lot there. Like, I've gone through probably 8 fairly in-depth, and there were so many more that I could have looked into, but I'm sure as the season goes on, we'll pick and choose a few more players to talk about as well.
It feels like this draft class might be one of those ones where it's not a superstar studded draft, but it's one of those ones where you're going to look back in a few years' time and go, do you know what was a good running back class? Was just solid pros?
Yeah.
Was this one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys that will fill a role for a team, but there's no sort of Bijan or Jahmyr Gibbs type.
Yes, so I was going to ask you about that because in my scouting, from what I was doing, I didn't like I was saying, I didn't see any Zekes or Bijan or Saquon types, but it did feel very 2017 to me a little bit, where it was like a good sum of running backs to look at. How many of those will be NFL ready or break through into the NFL, we'll see. But the other really interesting thing about running backs that I think that we really need to highlight is that these guys, they have a short shelf life, but they also they sprout out of nowhere. They can come out of nowhere. Like, I would not be surprised at all if the number one running back at the end of this college season, we don't even talk about today because they're not there. They might have been buried for whatever reason behind someone. If you think about the Texas Longhorns, well, Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, they're gone. So who's going to take over after them? Well, they've got that plan, and they might be just as good as, like another Roschon Johnson type. And we haven't been able to see him yet. So I'm excited to dig into this.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those ones that, like you said, you guys have a bigger list of guys than what I do. But like you said, at the end of the day, the one who could stand out from this we might not speak about until halfway through the season.
Yeah.
I think that's what I like about this sometimes is you've got your guys who I reckon they're going to be really great, and then I'm not even focusing on these guys, and then come the end of the season, you're all over. You found your guy. He's my guy that I'm really excited to see in the NFL. So looking forward to this, and I'm looking forward to revisiting this throughout the season so we can see where everyone ends up.
And like you were saying with the quarterbacks last week, Brad, I am actually worried with these running backs that I'm going to be so tied to them already that I might not, like, the season might continue on this season, and the running backs that I thought were going to be really good might sort of take a step back, but I won't be able to get out of my mind what I've already seen from them, and I'm going to have to learn to just sort of to separate that. I think I have a hard time with that, with the running backs more so than the quarterbacks and more so than the receivers.
And that's why for me, that's why when I look at my guys who I like looking into the draft, I usually wait until halfway through the season. So I'll watch games as a fan and try not to take too many notes or take too much notice of certain guys. But then when it gets to end of the season, middle of the season, that's when I try and start looking at some of these guys and go, okay, I want to look at their worst games. Then I want to look at their best games, and I want to see where did they improve? What did they do that made their game so bad? Was it their fault? Was it, look at all these different factors. So that's just how I've always had to do it, because I find, as you said, you pick your guy and right, that's my guy. I absolutely love him. And then come the end of the season, they've played terrible, but I can't get that bias out of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to switch that mindset once you're so focused in on it.
Exactly.
Now, if you're doing any scouting at the moment yourself, you might have noticed that a lot of people like to do their lists 5-1 and 10-1. I'm not really into that with these guys. I like starting at 1 and then going down from there, because I think it adds a little bit more intrigue and a little bit more element of suspense. A little bit. Having said that, I have seen, like, from other scouts and draft analysts that I've been doing some research on, it's like it's all over the place. Like, guys in there 1 or 2 or 3 are not in my top 5. And this is one of the things I love about scouting now and watching these guys is I won't sort of pay attention to any scouts or draft analysts. I'll go and do my own research. And then that way, when you actually see what other people's sort of like 1s and 2s and 3s are, it is nice and reaffirming. Because there's guys here that like some scouts didn't even have in their like top 30 that I've got at number 2, and I'm like, oh god, am I missing something? And then I go and listen to another thing, and then I'm like, oh no, it's okay, everything's fine. So
yeah, it's really hard to nail down sort of the order that you think these guys should be ranked in, which I had an awful time trying to list them 1 to 5. I gave up. I'm like, nothing. I'll put down what I think of them, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, trying to rank them sort of 1 to 5, it was hard to find a favorite at this point in time.
Awesome. Now, we did have a really fantastic show last week on the quarterbacks. If you're interested, go back and watch that. I highly recommend that. If you are watching this, if you're watching that, like the video, that helps us a lot, and subscribe. We had some really good numbers this week just gone, and I thought that this college analysis might take a step back. It didn't. It was really interesting to see, and so same again with these running backs. I'm very excited. Let's jump in. So let's jump in at number 1, and Dan, I'd be interested to get your number 1 to start.
I think I changed about 4 times as I was doing it.
Yeah, number 1.
You look at someone like, say, Treveyon Henderson, for example.
Yeah.
Before last year, I think I would have had him pretty much locked in at number 1 for this class. But then obviously last year he had his foot injury. He fractured his foot, which he tried to play through for a little bit. And then he had a torn ligament in his foot as well. So you look at his tape from last year and it wasn't that good. So you go back and compare to 2021. So
you almost need to throw it out.
Basically, yeah. So now
that's what I've done.
Righto, what is he coming into this year like? He's going to be, you'd think he's going to be back to full fitness. So where's he going to sit now as far as where his tape looks like? Is it going to be that 2021 season again? or is he going to take a step back from that and sort of settle in between 2021 and 22?
Mm-hmm.
If he can get back to his 2021 form, I think he's got a really good chance to be the number one running back in this class. But we were saying off air, I think it's so team dependent this year of who ends up being that number one guy. Like
at quarterback or running back or
running back.
Yeah, okay.
Because last year we had Bijan Robinson. We all knew he was going to be the top back taken.
Yeah.
This year, I think it depends what the team wants from their running back.
Yeah.
And we may not even see a running back taken in the first round this upcoming draft next year. Like teams could sit back and go, okay, what are we looking at from the running backs here? Do we want one in the first round? I think there's a high chance that we may not even get one sitting in the first round. I don't think we'll get one as high as we did, or we won't get one as high as we did this year. But even with Jameer,
do you think? Because like I was saying at the top of the show, I compared this class more in line with 2017. And in that class, even though none of us think Leonard Fournette is what these other guys were, he went, what, number 4?
Number 4, yeah.
And then Christian McCaffrey went 10, 8, yeah.
McCaffrey was 8, yeah.
And then it just like kept going from there. Nick Chubb was a high second round pick. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it ends, even though no one is Bijan, who went 8. But because of that, I wouldn't be surprised if a team sort of like snuck up. Although I think we've learned a lot as an NFL industry since 2017.
Well, my question is, so I just look back. So not the draft that's just gone, but the draft before that, the 2022 draft. I'll read out the first 2 running backs who were taken in the 2022 draft were Breece Hall at number 36.
Was he the first one? Wow.
He was the first one at 36, so second round. And then Kenneth Walker went at pick 41. So 2021, we had no running backs in the first round. 2022, sorry, we had no running backs in the first round. Yeah. So do you think that anyone in this class is on that same level as a Breece Hall or a Kenneth Walker?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do, but I understand what Dan's saying, maybe more about supply and demand, potentially. This is all like a long-winded way. Dan, I'm going to hazard a guess that Treveyon Henderson is not your number one after all the Treveyon Henderson talk that we're talking about.
Like I said, I couldn't rank him 1 to 5 or whatever. I just couldn't do it.
I think that's fair.
I think it just chopped and changed way too much. And at this point in time, before we go into this season, for me personally, I just didn't want to sit him like he's 1, he's 2, whatever. I've just got him in a group, and then whoever comes out of it from there as the season goes on, I think I'll start to rank him more as I get to the end of the season.
Okay, so loosely, who's your number one guy that you're looking at the most?
I'll say Treveyon Henderson because I want to see that 2021 form.
Yeah,
and you look at what he did. He's coming off the obviously injury with his foot and the torn ligaments, but before that, he had really good speed, really good burst. That short area quickness of his was elite. So can he get back to that after his foot heals up and he goes through the preseason, coming straight away into the season? Can he get back to that sort of form straight away? Or is it going to take a little bit of time to build up to it? Because if it takes a little bit of time to build up to it, we'll talk about the other running back at Ohio State a bit later on. I'm
sure.
Does he then have to end up taking a step back in that offense, which will then, I guess, skew his sort of draft capital as well? But so I'm keen to see how he comes out to start the season. He's a solid receiver, but at Ohio State, they didn't really use their running backs in the receiving game much.
Yeah, Stroud keeps his eyes downfield.
Yeah, and you look at the receivers they've got, they don't need to use the running backs in the short passing game. So there was no need for him there. It'll be interesting to see this year without CJ Stroud there, if that picks up a little bit for the running backs in the receiving game.
Yeah.
And then I guess I'm looking for him to be a bit more evasive this year. He tended to just run into people and try and overpower them a little bit instead of trying to evade them, which I think he should be doing more of. So I'm interested to see where he settles in this year and what sort of form he's back to as well, because if he has a big season that we know that he's capable of, I think he can easily put himself as top of the list for the running backs.
Does his foot injury, does that concern you? Because to me, a running back with foot like lower leg injuries is always a worry for me. I don't care whether it's a high ankle sprain, an Achilles, broken foot, whatever. Just any time I hear a running back who needs to use his feet that's his job, it always concerns me, the same way that a quarterback who has a shoulder injury always concerns me. Does that have any issues for either of you guys? Like, John, does that concern you with Treveyon?
Achilles concerns me. High Liz Frank concerns me as well, and high ankle sprain less so. There's almost like tiers of foot injuries that concern me. What Treveyon Henderson was experiencing doesn't as much, because I think one of them was just a broken foot, right?
Yeah, he fractured a bone in his foot.
Yeah, a clean break, I'm not worried about. Those people, players can come back fairly, like in less than a year. It's not like a ligament tear. So I'm not too concerned about it myself. Plus, they're really young.
I guess, and that's where this season will prove it. Like, it's just for me, when I hear running back, broken foot, torn ligament, to me that's usually like a sign for me to go, yeah, not sure if I'm too keen on that as of right now. So that's where, like you said earlier, Dan, that's where this season's tape will become relevant to see whether he can recapture the form from before the foot injury or not.
Yeah, I think doing it last year as opposed to this year going into the draft is massive for him. He can get back to that sort of form, and he'll be able to show on tape that he's back to that as well. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he goes this year.
Dan, I'm glad you said Treveyon Henderson, because he's also my number one as well. 5'10", 210 pounds, I think is a really good size, but he's fast and he's explosive. He gets on angles. He uses his hips really well in speed. I actually struggled, unlike the other running backs, I really struggled with a comp for him. I sort of felt like he was, and this might sound very strange because these are two very different running backs, but somewhere between like Miles Sanders and Travis Etienne, sort of. Like, he can sort of, he's small, he's elusive, but he's quick, but he's big enough at under 6 foot, unlike some of these other guys that we're going to talk about who are a bit bigger. Like you were saying, injured last season, and even when he played, it wasn't the most outstanding tape, but if you look at his 2021 tape, it is awesome. Came out as a freshman, went 1248 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns on 183 attempts. He was 6.8 yards a carry. Yards per carry, I find when I'm talking about NFL players, I kind of don't really pay any attention to, but in college, I don't mind yards per carry as a stat, because it really helps you sort of separate who are the best from the pack, as long as you have a sort of like a minimum attempts to work through. Because the thing about these dominant running backs in the NFL is they usually dominated in college, and a way to see how they dominated is with yards per carry, because they'll run over defenses. 27, and then the next year only 27 rushing attempts for 312 rushing yards, and 4. Sorry, no, that's his receptions. Receptions were 27 catches, 312 and 4. Like you were saying, Dan, didn't do a lot of pass catching, but again, it's just like CJ Stroud just never required it. Justin Fields, did they play together, Justin Fields and Treveyon Henderson? I don't think so.
No, they wouldn't have done.
Nah. But he does have really good hands. Like, you see some of his catches out of the backfield when he sort of spreads out and then runs sort of like a go route, and then he sort of becomes a receiver. Really, really good hands. And one of my other notes about his hands that really stood out to me as opposed to other running backs is he's not afraid of what's waiting for him on the other side. And what I mean by that is he's not afraid to run out of the backfield, get to the line of scrimmage or 5 yards beyond, turn around, grab the ball, and then instantly dip his shoulder and start running downfield again. If there's a defender there, he doesn't care. He's going to run through them. If there's not, he'll go. So there better be someone there, was my main notes on Treveyon Henderson. He might not be number one at the end of the season. I think quarterback might play a factor in his ability to perform, but for now, he is my number one. Brad, did you have any thoughts on Treveyon Henderson?
Just like I said, I haven't watched a lot of him yet, but like I said, this is where the way that I look at some of the guys I think comes in handy because, his freshman tape where he did so well, I don't know, to me sometimes that seems a little bit irrelevant because of the injury, if that makes sense. So like how you guys threw out last year's tape because of the injury.
Yeah.
I would also do that for the year, like his freshman year as well, because maybe I wouldn't throw it out. I'll use that as like a reference point, so to speak. So when I'll go and watch him after a few games this year, I'll watch a couple of his games from this year, and then I'll go back and watch the 2021 tape, one of his games, and try and go, is that burst still there? Is that, everything that he did so well in 2021, is that still there, or 2022? Is that still there now, or is he now a different type of runner? So, if you get what I mean. So like I'll try and more so utilize that 2021 film as like a reference point to see if he's a different runner now than where he was back then because of the injury.
I think with the foot injury, does he come in and be more hesitant behind the line of scrimmage before he hits the gaps?
Yeah, things like that would be for me like, you see some guys who, they might have not necessarily even significant injuries, but you see sometimes the guys who have the significant injuries like the ACLs and things like that. Prior to the ACLs, they see the open hole, they hit it, and bam, they're gone. They have the injury. Now all of a sudden, that where they see that crease where they would hit the gap and go. Now sometimes there's that half a second hesitation, and that gap closes up because of the linebackers or the defensive ends crashing down and moving the guards and the tackles and things like that. And then it's, it could have. Prior to the injury, it was a 12-yard gain, and now after the injury, that slight hesitation is a 2-yard loss.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll just be more so looking to see how he does after a couple of games, and then go back and use his freshman tape as a reference point.
For sure, Brad. Did you have anyone in particular at number one, or are you happy with what we've got?
I didn't. I didn't because, like I said, I haven't really looked as much into these guys as you, but I do have him as a guy who, I guess if we go like off of our quarterback show last week, he's one of these guys that I do want to watch, who will be quite high on my list because of that reasoning. Like he had such a good freshman season. Now I want to see, he'll be quite high on my list of wanting to see because I want to see how he bounces back after the injury.
For sure. All right, Dan, let's jump into your number two guy that you're looking at.
I think for me, you look at someone like a Blake Corum at number two. And again, he's another one coming off an injury. But before his injury, he was probably classed as one of the probably the number one back in this class before that injury. And it probably happened at the worst time possible for him because I'm not sure if he didn't get injured, he wouldn't have come back for this season. I think he might have entered the NFL draft.
Yeah, I think so.
Now coming back for his senior season off that pretty decent injury, I don't know how much it's going to hurt his draft capital, but I think he can have a massive season and hopefully keep himself up in that sort of, I think, day two range for him, whether it's the back end of the second or early third for him.
Yeah.
I think, but I really love what I watch with him. He's so much fun to watch. He's he's small, he's 5'8", 210 pounds, but he's just strong.
I had him at 200 flat.
200, I've had him listed 210. So
okay.
Yeah, Michigan. I'm just looking now. Michigan's website has him listed at 210.
Okay,
yeah.
That must have updated. I'm looking at Sports Reference.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So 5'8", 210. It's not a bad size, especially with the way he's built. He's not a slim 210 at that size. Like he's a nuggety sort of running back. But when you watch him play, he's got amazing vision, amazing patience behind that offensive line.
Yeah.
And the Michigan offensive line is one of the better ones in the country. And you watch him, you just watch his patience behind there, and it's just good to watch him see the gap, wait for it to open up, and then go straight for it.
Yeah.
So there's no wasted movement with him. He doesn't dance behind the line of scrimmage. He's knowing where he wants to go, and then he can see it open up in different ways as well. So as soon as he sees that hole open up, he's straight to it. And then he's elusive. He's got amazing change of direction as well. And he's got a pretty awesome jump cut that he utilises that's pretty devastating as well. So he's got all the moves that you want from a running back. And especially at that size, being able to move that way, he's tough to bring down. And he's not easy to tackle either. Like, he's not easy to wrap up. So he's going to be very good to watch this year. I'm hoping he comes back completely fine. I've seen a couple of little interviews with him. He says he's almost back to 100% now, pretty much ready to go. I don't think there'll be any sort of holding back with him this year. So I think we'll see the best out of him this year now coming out, which is good for him. I think it'd be interesting to see if they use him in the receiving game as well. I think he had 24 receptions in 2021. I think he dropped down to 11 or something last year.
Yeah, I just had it up. He did have 11 receptions last season and 24 the season before that. Yeah.
So he's been used. Like, you look at that 24 receptions, that was 2 a game that he got in 2021. So he has shown he has that to his game. So can he be a 3-down back in the NFL? Or do they just use him as a 3rd down back and then spell their main running back on 1st and 2nd down? How are they going to use him? I'm not sure. But again, I think that comes down to the team that ends up drafting him. So there's a lot to like about him. He's just a solid running back, does a lot of everything really well.
Yeah, see, it's funny. I guess my strengths for him, Dan, you've covered already. I had great vision, awesome change of direction, and great patience behind the line. So he sets up his blocks. The only real concerns that I had were, his size and his frame, 5'8", 210. How would that hold up in the NFL? I haven't seen a lot of his tape, but from the ones that I was just curious about how his effectiveness will be in short yardage situations. Which is why, for me, I would actually see him more so being maybe a 1st and 2nd down back in the NFL as opposed to a 3rd down back, because to me, the best prototypical 3rd down back that you want now is Jamal Williams. Can get the short yardage situations, can catch if you need, but, those tough yards, that's what you want for him to get. So they were my sort of concerns for him. But I was like, you're talking about like him being drafted to a team that works. To me, that would be, a team like, actually sort of depends on how their undrafted rookie free agent that they signed this year. But he would be a good pairing, I'd think, in Tampa Bay with Rachaad White.
Oh yeah, and you're talking about is it Scott?
Sean, yeah. So, like, to me, it depends on how he does, but to me, they would seem like a great sort of 1-2 sort of, grouping, because Rachaad White's really so good in the passing game.
Is that because you can see him in a Tampa Bay uniform and it's like reminiscent of like Doug Martin or something?
Well, actually, I mean, I was sort of trying to think just off the top of my head, like where it would sort of make sense, and you sort of start going through the teams in the NFL at the moment. Like, you go through the East, and Miami's got 37 running backs, so you're not going to be with the Dolphins. Patriots have Ramondre, and he's a guy that you want really out there as a 3-down back. I mean, the only other place I guess you could see him, but everyone likes the backup, maybe Pittsburgh. But everyone seems to like Jaylen Warren. But then, him and Najee together, what's that sort of... I'm not sure if that's a real change of pace back when you have both of them there, sort of thing. So, you start looking at some of the teams that are around, and for a guy who I'm not 100% convinced maybe is a 3rd down back, I feel like he's more of the 1st or 2nd down. But like I said, if his receptions per game picks up again this year, that might change my mind as to where he might fit in. And then, if that does happen and he becomes more of a pass catching back this year, who wouldn't want to see him in LA with Austin Eckler?
Well, that'd be interesting too.
Yeah, that'd be a funny combination.
Say Austin Eckler's still going to be there next year.
Well, that's the thing too. Like, if Austin Eckler moves on, and he can improve his pass catching. I mean, you've got it's just you sort of once you start looking around at running backs, it gets a little bit harder to try and figure out where some of these guys might go, which might also lead to the earlier point we had about maybe them not making it in the first round.
I struggled with Blake Corum, to be honest. And I know that everyone's really high on him, and I might change my tune, and I kind of am already now that you're telling me he's 210 instead of 200. But honestly, I think Blake Corum has a Donovan Edwards issue there in Michigan. We may as well talk about both Michigan running backs, I think, at this point as well. Blake Corum, to me, so right now he's not in my top 5 of this exercise. But in a vacuum, see, this is the weird thing. In a vacuum where we're judging the running backs this season coming, then he'd probably be 2 or 3 for me. But I'm interested to see how this translates to the NFL. I kind of comped him to like a smaller kind of James Conner type, runs very low to the ground, gets around guys. I think a lot of people are going to comp him to Darren Sproles, and I don't see him that way as Darren Sproles. I see him, I'm not saying he's Boston Scott, but I'd say he's closer to Boston Scott than he is Darren Sproles. Even what you were saying, even what I was just saying, like Doug Martin might even be, maybe like college Doug Martin might even be a good comp for him. My notes for him were great acceleration, but he's going to need it at his size because for every 3 or 4 steps that he's taking, the defender's taking 2. When he goes to jump over guys, which he likes to do a lot, he might get as high as like their shoulders. So he can't actually jump over people, even though he tries to. 1,400 yards was impressive, and 18 touchdowns was awesome. But yeah, only the 80 receiving yards, and I think that's a scheme thing. And like I was joking about it with you the other day in our group chat, but honestly, with JJ McCarthy, Blake Corum, and Donovan Edwards, they're all small, they're all thin. There's no like prototypical NFL body type there to really like compare them. So you look at them and you're like, oh yeah, they look normal. They look like the right size, but in reality, it's only because that backfield, they're all the same size. So I like what you said about day 2 running back is how I kind of see him as well. I think if he can have a really good season this year, I think teams will get excited about him. I can see teams getting excited about him. But for my mind, if I'm drafting him in fantasy, he's just not my prototypical running back that I ever touch.
He'll end up, I've just figured out the team, he'll end up on the Las Vegas Raiders if they don't re-sign Josh Jacobs and Josh Jacobs goes. Yeah. That's where he'll end up. Because to me, he sort of, you mentioned Doug Martin, to me, he sort of fits that Josh McDaniels mold of, you look at the way that the Patriots had their running backs for all those years when McDaniels was there, they had the running back, and they had the pass-catching running back.
Yeah, specific roles.
James White, the pass-catching back. Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, the running back. You know what I mean? Like Lawrence Maroney, like all those sorts of guys. So to me, Blake Corum probably seems like he might be a Las Vegas Raider. Even if they do keep Josh Jacobs around, I wouldn't be surprised to see him as one of these guys that they bring in. But yeah, interesting sort of thought process behind these guys as to where they might end up come the draft. Because like you said, I mean, from some of the guys that I've seen so far, and granted, like I said, I haven't seen as many of you guys, I don't see any of these guys on that same level as like a Breece Hall and a Kenneth Walker, who went early in the second round. So I'm not seeing one of these guys go late first round like a CEH did in 2020 or anything like that. To me, they all sort of seem like maybe even in that 2020 draft, because you think back there, they had DeAndre Swift was an early second rounder, Jonathan Taylor was an early second rounder. Like I could see maybe early second round as high as some of these guys go.
Yeah.
And I think for my part, just lastly on Blake Corum is like, he's not, I'm not saying he's Michael Carter at all on the Jets, but if he had a Michael Carter type draft, type career, there's flashes. It's exciting. He catches a few passes, but other than that, he's not really anything on the team. Like, I don't think I'd be too surprised of that. Is kind of where I have him as well. Having said that, like, let's see what happens to him this season. He might be awesome, and he might, be the second coming of trying to think like small running backs drafted in the first round. The only one I can think of is like Josh Jacobs, but even then, I think he was a bit bigger.
He's not small, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll skip over my 2 for now while we're talking about Michigan running backs and go to my number 3, because that was Donovan Edwards. And like we were saying, I think while everyone's talking about Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards is the one that I want more than anyone. Similar. So he's 6 foot. He's 205. I've got it listed out here. He might be a bit bigger though, but also on film, like, he looks bigger. He looks bigger than what his measurements are. He looks bigger than JJ McCarthy next to him. I think he's got great vision. I think he's got great hands as well. And so my comp for Donovan Edwards was like a Matt Breida type I had here. I think he's faster than Blake Corum. I think he's more explosive. Even not interested trying to compare the two who are in this system, he's explosive in his own right. He had 4. This was actually really cool. He had 4 rushes of over 60 yards, which was tied first in FBS in all of college football. He had also, across his 2 seasons, from 57 catches, he only dropped 1 pass. So for me, he's got good hands. He's got good vision. He's explosive. He's kind of like more of a size and a build that I would go for. I'm really looking forward to him. And again, like I was saying, in this Michigan system where these 2 running backs can thrive because they're not putting too much on JJ McCarthy to move the offense, this is where I get really excited, because I think it's going to be one of these situations where both running backs are really good. And I've seen from a lot of scouts and draft analysts that, like, a lot of people have both of them in their top 5 as well. I don't personally, but I can definitely see it. He had some really good games last year. Even towards the end of the season, it started to look like Michigan were using Blake Corum less, and I don't know if it was the injury, but they started using Donovan Edwards way more. You look at against Ohio State, 22 attempts, 216 yards, 2 touchdowns, as well as then the next week against Purdue, he had 25 attempts, 185 rushing yards, and 1 touchdown. And then, that was in the bowl game, and then against TCU in the championship. Before the championship, 23 attempts, 119 yards. So they started to use him more, and he is really effective when they do. 7.1 yards per carry last season. I thought he was awesome. And I think visually for me, he looks awesome as well. Be interested to see what you guys thought of Donovan Edwards.
Well, my couple notes, I've only got a couple, so then Dan might be able to extrapolate from there. But I thought he was, I guess, what you'd call like a natural playmaker. You just want to get the ball in his hands somehow. So he ran a lot of like sweeps and things like that. Like, so to me, he's that guy. You just got to you call him a running back, but to me, sort of just like that offensive weapon type. Like, just get him the ball somehow and just try and let him create. I had that he was more quicker than fast.
Mm-hmm.
If that. Yep. Like, so he's got some explosiveness to get to the edge, but not enough to be like a huge home run hitter in the NFL, was my sort of thinking. Like, when you get to, to me, sort of thinking like a home run hitter type of guy with speed is like one of my favorites to come back to is like Raheim Mostert. Raheim Mostert, if he hits that hole, no one's catching him. Like, if he gets that open field, no one's catching Raheim Mostert at top speed. And I think actually the last couple of years, he's actually been clocked by Next Gen Stats as the fastest running back or fastest player in the NFL, actually, I think.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to say like he'll like break the game open with his speed.
No.
I was more just trying to say like he does have that quickness and that agility, that acceleration.
And that's where I think like that's why I had like more quicker than fast, because I think he's actually got that explosiveness to get out to the edge probably before like a linebacker or someone can. And he could. I feel like he's going to be that guy who has I might be able to get you a 20-yard run or a 30-yard run, but then I'm going to be brought down from behind, sort of thing. Like, there's not going to be able to break that contain on the edge, get around, and suddenly he's gone for a 60 or a 70-yard run.
Just on that, if it makes you feel any better, Brad, he did lead the the whole of college last season in runs of 50 plus yards.
Yeah, but see, I think so. I think in college, yes, but it's more so trying to project him to the next level because I sort of feel like, if he ends up in a team and he's playing against the Seahawks, like Tariq Woolen's going to run him down from the other side of the field.
Sure.
I just think like NFL speed is a lot different than college speed. So I feel like he's going to be able to break off some big runs, but not to be that. You sort of think of like even last year, we've mentioned him already, but Josh Jacobs in that Vegas game where he broke off that run and ran 75 yards for a touchdown and no one got near him.
Yeah, don't remind me. That was one of the like lowlights of my entire season last year is that one run.
But I don't know whether Donovan Edwards is going to be able to do that at the next level. I think he would be one of those guys. He'll break that run, but he'll be brought down around midfield sort of thing.
Yeah, I think so as well. Because I had him as he's got good speed. It's not great. It looks good behind that Michigan offensive line, a lot more than it will look good in the NFL, I think. And I actually really struggled with Donovan Edwards looking at him. I thought I was going to like him a lot more than what I ended up liking him now.
Mm.
For his size, I had him at 6 foot 202. For his size, he doesn't show a lot of elusiveness for mine. I think he's very easy to get wrapped up. And if he doesn't have a clear lane that he's just charging towards, he doesn't sort of... I don't think he creates enough for mine before he gets wrapped up. Like a lot of his big runs against Ohio State, he had that 200-plus game, but 2 of those runs were both 80-plus yards.
Yeah.
And when you watch those plays, it was basically just see the hole, go to the hole, and he's gone. He didn't have to do a lot for it. And I think
still like the type of score that Ohio State is, like even against Penn State in week 5, 173 yards, like those are 2 very, very, very good teams to do that on. But I know what you mean about the offensive line.
It's against them, it's a positive. But I don't know, just in a lot of his other tape, I just didn't see enough from him to like him sort of thing, to put him up in that top sort of 4, maybe even 5 for me. For his size, I don't think he was shifty enough for mine. I think he tried to play too much like a bit of a power back that I found. I don't know. It's hard to judge him at the moment for me, I think. I'm going to have to watch him a lot more this year.
And that's kind of why my comp for him was like Matt Breida is what I was trying to like. When Matt Breida was on the 49ers, I was thinking of that Thursday night game against the Browns where he went for 2 explosive runs for touchdowns, and he would do that. He would see the hole. And that's why I think I know what you're saying about the offensive line is creating lanes for him, but I think he's got good vision. And I think when he hits it, when he sees what he wants, he hits it and then he gets through it. Yeah. But that's what I love about him. I think that's a great quality.
It's definitely a massive positive for him. And he needs that at the next level. And then, like you said, the receiving game, he's a really good receiver. It doesn't show up in the stat book, but you watch the routes he's running. He's running a lot of routes out there, and it's just the passes aren't going to him. But he's got the ability to be a really good receiver at the next level as well, which I think is a massive positive for him, obviously. So he's got that to his game. Like Brad said, he's not going to be a burner. He's got enough speed, but not too much. So I don't know. I struggled with how I thought about him more than I thought I would.
So what John's trying to say is because he's Matt Breida, he's going to be drafted next year in the 3rd round by Kyle Shanahan and annoy every fantasy owner when he doesn't get it.
I was thinking like if he can replace Elijah Mitchell, I'd be stoked with that. I think he'd be awesome in the Shanahan system. And I can't get it out of my head.
That'd be good fun, actually, yeah.
Or Matt LaFleur might take him in Green Bay to really pair, have him, AJ Dillon, Aaron Jones all together. It'll be a 3-headed monster.
Yeah. I'm going to have to take back what I said about him, aren't I? I love him. He's so good.
No, but you can, because this is the thing is we can watch the season ahead and then you can be like, oh yeah, no, I was just reserving judgment. Yeah. As we always do. We have to
go too overboard, yeah.
What you'd say is you're like, I was trying to talk him down because I was so excited to get him, but I was trying not to get my expectations up in case we didn't.
Excitement under control, yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. That's so funny you say that. Just a quick side note before we continue is I've got my dynasty draft next week. I've got guys that I'm really targeting who are late, and I feel like I can't talk about them on our shows because like my friends will listen and score them. So I'm like, once this draft happens, I will be Pandora's box. I will give all of my knowledge and all of my information, but I am holding back just a little bit.
So if anyone's in John's Dynasty League, he's going Clayton Tune round 1. He is going AT Perry in round 2.
Yes.
He is going... Oh, wait, sorry, forget that. I've just ruined your strategy, John. Sorry,
no, but you don't understand, Brad. I control the show. I can just edit
you can edit this out.
All right, cool. Let's jump to my number 2 now, which I was kind of nervous to talk about because I didn't see his name anywhere, and that is Trey Benson out of Florida State. And I'm just going to preface by saying I didn't see him in some people's top 30 overall. But then I was listening to NFL Stock Exchange in the recent episode that they did, and then they had him at number 2 or even number 1. I think Trevor Sycamore had him number 1. So then I was like, okay, cool. I'm not crazy, which again is this, it's a nice bit of gratification when you can scout these guys, you can order them, and then you can be like, oh yeah, I was right. Or like what I think aligns with what other people think. As opposed to sometimes you'll see a guy and you're like, yeah, this guy could really be something. He could really be something. I'm thinking back to a few years ago, or actually it's probably like 5 years ago now. Do you guys remember Booby James Williams? No, that's fine because he signed to a team. He was an undrafted free agent, signed to a team, and then just was never anything. But there was a little bit of chatter him in the Twitter sphere for a little bit. We all wanted him to become something he didn't. Anyway, that's not this guy, Trey Benson. So out of Florida State, he's going to be playing with alongside Jordan Travis. And I think the combination of Jordan Travis and Trey Benson is going to be unreal this season. I would not be surprised if Florida State becomes a top 10 team. I would not be surprised if they become a top 5 team. I think that these guys are going to be this good. My notes for Trey Benson. So look, so he is 6'1", 211 pounds. I've got him at, which is really, really good size and speed. He did come from Oregon initially, where he didn't get much work. He didn't get much production. And then he played 1 season last year at Florida State. He only had 154 attempts for 990 yards. He did have 13 catches for 144 yards, and he had 9 rushing touchdowns as well. But I think one of the issues that Trey Benson has is he's got a Jordan Travis problem, essentially, is because Jordan Travis is running the ball and scrambling so much that Trey Benson isn't getting the work that he needs. But when he does, I think he's awesome. So my notes here, not a ton of production, but it could just be because of Jordan Travis. He bounces off humans. He breaks tackles at such a rate that I love, and broken tackle rate is one of my favorite stats to measure running backs by. I think he's really elusive. He has a lot of elusiveness. He is patient behind the line. I know we're just talking about Blake Corum, but this is like a different kind of patient behind the line. I comped it to Le'Veon Bell at Michigan State, not Le'Veon Bell at Pittsburgh, if that makes sense. So kind of like before Le'Veon Bell was Le'Veon Bell. My actual comp for him that I had was Devin Singletary on the Bills, where it's like, you know, he's not... He'll try to bowl over people. Sometimes he will. Sometimes he won't. But he'll always give it a go. He'll try and dodge. He'll give it like all of his energy. And I think that he's in line. It's going to depend entirely on Jordan Travis, but I think the two of these guys are going to be really, really good. He's my number 2. I would not be surprised if he sort of comes out and goes at early round 2 pick in the NFL draft for my liking. Any thoughts on Trey Benson?
You want to go, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, I had that. I thought he was explosive, elusive in the open field. I'm a big fan of. I thought he seems like he seems like a very scheme versatile type of running back. Because, like you said, John, like he's got Jordan Travis there who runs a lot, so they can run that RPO sort of game when he gets to the next level. But he also seems like a guy who, to me, you could almost drop him on nearly any team and he'll do well. Yeah, I don't think you've always got those type of running backs who can do that. But I think he's actually one of them, like really high IQ. Only things that I was sort of concerned about and what I'll be looking for this year is I think he needs to improve his pass protection that little bit, because sometimes that can see these guys end up as 3 down backs and things like that. Like some of this little stuff, I want to see it improve, because you clean that up and you can go from, like you were saying, a mid to early second round pick, and you might find yourself up in the back end of the first round because of it and become almost like a franchise type of guy. But it was that I wasn't a big fan of his running in short yardage situations. Like I think he can improve on that. But as you said, John, that's sort of back to your comp. Like he tries to bowl people over and can't really do it.
Mm-hmm.
And
sometimes.
So yeah, and I think too that might also have to do. He just runs. Sometimes he runs a bit high. Like his pad level's a bit high. If that makes like he just sort of seems a bit.
He's a bit of an upright runner. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just sort of makes him that little bit, harder to tackle. Well, sorry, a bit easier to tackle, which can eliminate some of those issues of short yardage and things like that. But just watching him, my sort of player comps that I had were just more so based off his running style and who it just reminded me of. And the 2 current players it reminds me of, and one was Tyler Algier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just the running style just reminded me of him. The other was a skinnier, faster version of Deontay Foreman.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, like
Interesting.
I watched Deontay Foreman like last year with the Panthers, and I think if you actually go back and you watch some of Deontay Foreman's running, like, and then you put Trey Benson next to each other, their running styles are actually very similar.
Yeah.
And I mean, Deontay Foreman's a bigger bruiser and is a guy who excels in that short yardage. But then the couple pass players who he reminded me of were Jay Ajayi and actually Ronnie Brown. Like they all have very similar sort of running styles. So to me, I quite like him. He wasn't really on my watch list until you mentioned something the other day about it, John. And after watching some of his stuff, I was actually like, I actually kind of like him.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying about that. And that, I guess that's also what I meant by saying Le'Veon Bell is, like, do you remember how Le'Veon Bell would get the ball and he'd sort of stand there, but he would be like sort of upright because he's sort of like looking where he wants to go, and then he'd hit it. Yeah, and that's what I meant. So, like, I didn't mind his short yardage. He doesn't do it quite to the extent that Bell does, and no running back will ever, and might not ever again. But I sort of felt like the somewhere between Devin Singletary and I think your comp of Tyler Algier is a great one as well, where it's sort of like gets up, has a look around, and then sort of like hits it.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be a guy who it's 4th down in a playoff game and you need 2.5 yards to try and keep a drive alive and either win the game or ice the game. I don't think he's going to be that guy at the moment, and that's where for me I'd like to see how he does this year and if he can improve and if he can actually work on that a little bit more to try and become that guy, because like I said, I don't see him at the moment as a 3 down back in that situation. He sort of seems like he would go to a team who, and to me, like Deontay Foreman is that perfect guy for that type of role, and that's why, I'm looking forward to seeing him on the Bears this year to see what he does. But he seems like that kind of guy who, I need to get these hard yards. I can do that. I like Trey Benson. I just want to see him improve on it this year and see if he can actually become that type of guy, or if he's just going to be a first, second down type of guy and take him off the field in short yardage situations.
Yeah, I think both of you guys basically stole my notes as well. So I think I'm on the same page. I didn't have him. I think I would have had him probably 4th or 5th. I don't understand how people have got him outside their top 30. That doesn't make sense to me at all. So I'm not sure what's going on there. But for me, like you said, John, he's got good patience. I think he's got really good athleticism that goes with his size, which is good. I think he fights his way through contact a lot as well. He's tough to get down at times. Also, like Brad said, he definitely needs to work on his pass blocking, which is a massive thing come the next level for him if he wants to be on the field as much as he can. So it'll be interesting to see how that improves this year. And like you said, John, with Jordan Travis there, it's always tough for a running back in that sort of offense with their pass blocking, because you've got to be always ready to get the ball on the handoff and then switch it straight to a pass block as well. So it's tough in that sort of offense to sort of gauge where he's at in a standard type of pass blocking offense. So that'd be interesting to see how it translates this year as well. And then, I think good, not great speed. I think he's got enough speed though. It'd be interesting to see what his 40 time ends up being. Same with a lot of these guys as well, I think.
Yeah.
But I think I've said here, look for him to stamp himself as a top 5 back this year in college. I think that's definitely something that he'll be come the end of the year. I think he's locked in to be a top 5 back. I think we'll see him go over 1,000 yards rushing. We'll see him in double-digit touchdowns this year.
Yeah.
So, and can he get more involved in the passing game as well? That'd be an important thing just to see if he can.
I think all of those questions are just really reliant on Jordan Travis. I was talking about John Vogel on Twitter, who I do quite like. He is at Draft Vogel on Twitter, who he put out his current preseason running back rankings, and so he has ranked them. And I went over through this list like 3 or 4 times, and I can't.
Oh, that was I know the list you're talking about.
I can't see him anywhere. Having said that, though, there were a bunch of people who all commented and said, like, hey, watch out for Trey Benson. He's definitely there. So I thought I was crazy. And then, like I was saying earlier, when I listened to NFL Stock Exchange and Trevor Sycamore had him number 1, I was like, okay, cool. I'm not completely insane. Brad, I do struggle with the Deontay Foreman comp. I'm going to be honest, I don't see it in any way. But in my mind, Deontay Foreman reminds me more of like Derrick Henry than anyone else. So
yeah, it's not necessarily like he's going to end up like a Deontay Foreman. It's just his running style. So when I looked at Deontay Foreman's running style compared with Trey Benson's, his actual running style looks very similar to Deontay Foreman. But that's where I was saying he would be a skinnier, faster version of what Deontay Foreman looks like. That was just my initial thoughts looking at him. Haven't looked as in another 6 weeks' time, I might come back and go, yeah, what was I thinking? There's nothing like Deontay Foreman. But it's just that, when sometimes when you see how someone runs, like for me, like a guy last year, first time I saw him started looking at his tape was a wide receiver, and I've never been able to get this comp out of my head ever since, was Kayshon Boutte. To me, was a faster Jarvis Landry.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I have never been able to get that out of my head. Just the way he ran and he played, it just reminded me of Jarvis Landry. And I say faster Jarvis, it wasn't that much faster than Jarvis Landry, but it is just his play style. So sometimes I can get comps, just play style comps in my head of some of these guys, and it's just hard for me to get that out of my head. But that's just who my first thought when I saw him. I was like, oh, that's who he reminds me of, just his young style.
All right, let's race through these last couple of guys because I was hoping to not go over an hour. Oh, well. Dan, let's grab your number 3 guy or third person you'd like to talk about.
I am really high on Brelan Allen.
Yes, it's time.
I don't so much have a team when I support college football. I sort of chop and change. I've never sort of locked down a team. I love Wisconsin, Green Bay Packer fan.
My team changes every season, so...
Yeah, so I'm like Green Bay Packer fan, Wisconsin. I love the way they play.
Yeah.
Brelan Allen is so intriguing to me. He's 6'2", 240 pounds. He's going to be... If he comes out for
That's 97th percentile, just quickly.
Yeah. If he comes out for next year's draft, his entire first season in the NFL, he's going to be 20 years old. He's basically played 2 years of running back. He played quarterback and he played safety in high school. He was recruited as a linebacker. They weren't sure if he was going to be a linebacker or a safety at college. They decided to play him at running back. He comes out his first 2 seasons as a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old, over 1,200 yards both years. Like, that's insane at that age in that offense. Like, I saw a stat. He had 61% of his runs facing an 8-man box. So 61% of the time, he's got 8 in the box, just smothering him at the line of scrimmage.
It's nuts.
That was
like Derrick Henry numbers.
Yeah.
That was ranked 4th in the country against that sort of number. The top 3 were all the service academies, like Navy, Army, Air Force, who all just run the ball nonstop.
Yeah, and that's all they can do. That's all they know how.
So you take them out of it. He's facing stacked boxes the most in the entire country. And as a 17 and 18-year-old, he's put up 1,200 plus yards both seasons. It's just crazy what he's doing to start his college career. He's not perfect by any means. There's a lot that he can improve on. But again, 2 years of running back. I don't think he played much of it in high school. So I think the sky's the limit for him as far as what he can still learn. And I think 6'2", 240 pounds, I think he can slim down a little bit when he comes into the NFL, which hopefully gives him that little bit more elusiveness and evasiveness as well. He doesn't have the great lateral movement, which he'll need at the next level. So I think if he can slim down a little bit, keep his speed, because he's got solid speed. I'm really intrigued about him at the next level as well. I love him. He's been one of my favourite college players for the last 2 years, just watching him. So it'd be interesting to see what you guys think of him. But yeah, I think I'm really excited about what he can become.
Yeah, so Wisconsin went into the 2021 season thinking Ches Malusi was going to be like the primary guy, and they took one look at Brelan Allen and went, nope, holy shit, that guy, he's going to be the guy. And he just never looked back. He took it and ran with it.
Yeah.
I've just found you might see me smirking, I've just seen the best paragraph I've ever seen written by someone about Brelan Allen. I've got to read this out. You're going to love this. Brelan Allen is a natural playmaker at his best with the ball in his hands. He runs with violence. He's capable of thrashing through tacklers, and he has the natural balance to withstand contact. He made Bruce Feldman's freak list ranked number 18, and Bruce Feldman wrote, the 6'2", 235-pounder is already exceptionally powerful, power cleaning 406 pounds, back squatting 610, and bench pressing 365 pounds. In addition, his 10-yard split is also freakishly fast for such a big back, going at 1.49 seconds. To me, that's just one of the best paragraphs I've ever read about a running back. I love he runs with the violence, but they're just, to me, that's just numbers that a guy like that size shouldn't be able to do those sorts of things.
He's nuts. I'm watching him right now. He's nuts. My comp for him was, you know how so we all wanted Deebo Samuel so badly to be, and we all wanted Deebo Samuel to be like the out of the backfield guy who could take it and run. Brelan Allen is so big, I can't stop seeing a wide receiver. But for my comp for him, because of his size and his build and his stature, is Deebo Samuel. I'm not saying he's a Swiss Army knife. But he is like when Deebo would get the ball in the backfield, grab it and run and get around defenders and move his hips in a way and just bowl people over and never give up on the play. That's what he is. Like, I think Brelan Allen has every chance to be the number one running back at the end of the season.
I was just about to say that to you. They're changing their offense this year. They're going to be a lot more wide open passing attack as well.
Yeah.
If he can show any sort of receiving upside to his game this year, combined with everything he can do as a runner, I think he's a massive chance of being the first running back taken.
Yep, and he's got good hands as well. He can catch the ball in a similar fashion. Now, I don't know what his yards after the catch would be like, and that's where I don't think he's like Deebo at all. But he is, I think he's the one running back in this entire class who is pro ready. Like, he is NFL ready right now. I'd be really interested to see what he runs in the combine for his 40-yard dash. Yeah, like you were saying, 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns. And my other, it looks like Jonathan Taylor all over again, is the way I see him. He's one of, I'm trying to think of who the fourth person is, but Jonathan Taylor, James White, and one other running back. The only freshman in Wisconsin history to have over 1,000 yards in their first year.
Was it Melvin Gordon?
Ron Dane.
Ron Dane, that's it. No, Melvin Gordon played at Washington.
Washington. Well, yeah.
Is it D? Maybe.
We'll get research onto it. Hang on.
Yeah, thank you. Brelan Allen is exciting. I don't find him to be the fastest guy, the most explosive. And like you were saying, like his lateral movement, it's just not there. But I think that's just because of his size. Yeah. And honestly, in his game, I don't think he needs it too much.
And I think a lot of it comes down to just inexperience of not growing up playing running back.
Yeah.
Like it's a complete different position for him. So there's so much for him to learn. And the fact he's doing it at such a young age. And like I said, he'll come into the NFL and he's going to be 20 years old for the entire season. So by the time he gets to his second contract, if he's not a first round pick, by the time he gets to his second contract, he's going to be 24. So I think the upside for Brelan Allen is extremely high.
Yeah, Melvin Gordon was Wisconsin.
Yeah, sorry, was cool.
It's the just looking at Melvin Gordon's. I know I'm taking a quick sidetrack. God, he was an incredible college athlete. His last year, 14 games he played, 343 rushing attempts, 2,587 yards at a 7.5 average yard per carry with 29 touchdowns in his senior season.
He was a top 15 pick, wasn't he? He was pick 15.
He was.
So what we're saying is Wisconsin like their running backs to stay in the program a long time.
Running back university almost.
That's awesome.
Definitely. If he's anything like the other Wisconsin backs, he should have a good career.
He's in really good company, and he was my number 4 guy. And even just talking about him now, I'm like, I need to bump him up, man. I would take him over Donovan Edwards. What am I talking about?
100%. Yeah, I don't know what you're doing.
That's it. He's number 3. He already is right now. Anything else on Brelan Allen?
No, I love him. I can't wait to see where he goes. I hope he gets that workhorse role at the NFL level.
Exciting. My number 5 guy, which we don't need to spend too much time on, because this is where I start to think like it really you could start to clump a few guys in here. But I do think Raheim Sanders is just Rocket Sanders, just a little bit above these other guys at Arkansas. And similar to what I was saying about Florida State, I think him and KJ Jefferson make just such an awesome, it's like 2 guys are just constantly punching the defense in the face. He's got really good physicality, I think, which we don't see in a lot of these other guys. I also just particularly like that his size, it just seems like the NFL is moving to the smaller running back is how I kind of feel, or just a smaller receiver, like the smaller type players, smaller quarterbacks. Like we start to see, more Bryce Young types, more Kyler types, more Devonta Smith types and Tank Dell types. But so Raheim Sanders to me, 6'2", 225, he's one of sort of like those, you don't see them too often, the full size guy that you really like to see. At Arkansas last season, 222 rushing attempts, 1,400 yards, 10 touchdowns, 250 yards from scrimmage, so 270 through the air as well and 2 touchdowns. So he was still catching a few passes out of the backfield with KJ Jefferson at the helm. I'm excited to see what he can become. I actually think if he has a really, really good season this year, I would not be surprised if he jumps into the first round just because of his physical size, his build, and his sort of play style. I think a lot of NFL teams will like that sort of run the rock mentality.
Yeah, I haven't really watched too much of him, so I can't really comment on any of that. But what you've looked at him a bit, Dan, haven't you?
Yeah, so I'm interested to see what you think when you watch him, because I can see where John's coming from, and I understand I'm the same a lot of the time on what he said. But for me, for someone that's 6'2", I had him at 227, but for someone at that size, I just found he almost conceded the win to the defender too often. I didn't think he used his size to his advantage as much as he should have. I think there was a lot of times where you watch him running and he sort of, instead of barging through the defender, he almost kind of just raced for the contact instead of initiating it. And I think I found that far too often with him in the tape that I was watching. So I think he needs to get a lot better at that, because at that size, he should be trying to steamroll defenders, especially defensive backs and that sort of thing, which we've seen. We know he can do it. He's done it. We watched him do it on tape, but just not often enough for my liking. I think he danced behind the line of scrimmage a little too much as well. He was patient, but at times he was a little too patient. But I think he sort of saw the gap in time when he should have seen it and just powered through it. So I think he can improve on that as well. But the overall base of what he can do as a running back is really exciting for me. He's just got to work on that, because he's got the good vision, he's got the good patience, but he just needs to, I think, hit it a lot quicker.
His comp for me, and this is what I thought was probably the closest comp out of any of these guys, was DeMarco Murray. Oh, no, sorry, Darren McFadden. Like, upright. He's an upright runner. And I actually think that kind of old school running back playing style might turn a few fantasy players off him, because they want sort of like the new kind of hotness, like the elusive, the breaking tackles.
Yeah.
He's upright. He'll run into people. He'll push them off him, sort of like stiff arm Derrick Henry style. It's not always going to work. In fact, probably it'll only work like 4 times out of 10. But when it does work, it's awesome.
Yeah, I really like him. I've got him in my top 5 as well. So, and like you said, he's got good hands in the receiving game. So for someone that size to be able to be used in the receiving game is a massive plus for him. So I'm excited to see how he goes this season. I'm excited to see how Arkansas go this season. So see where he ends up at the end of the year.
Who else have you got on your list, John? Anyone else that you really want to talk about here?
So that was my number 5. That was Dan's number 5. So let's just sort of power through these last couple of guys, and then we'll close out the show, because I don't think we can't end this show without at least mentioning Bucky Irving, I think, from Oregon. Now, there's no way about it. He's small. He's 5'10", 190. He's really small. But man, he is just a shot out of a cannon. He is just like a cat on cold water. He will just get in all sorts of angles, run around defenders. And when I say run around defenders, I mean like he runs around people. I think he has explosive speed that most people don't see coming. Dan, I'd be interested to see, because you had a bit of a bromance for Bucky Irving through the week.
Yeah, I like him. I don't like the size, but I think in today's NFL, you can get away with being that size, depending how they're used. And he's not going to be a guy that they're looking to run between the tackles an awful lot, especially at the next level. They're going to try and get him to the outside as quick as they possibly can. So I think you'll see him on a lot of toss plays and that sort of thing. And like I said, he's got really good speed, which you hope he does at that size. But he started off, so his freshman year he was at Minnesota. He had a good season there. I think he had 600 plus yards at Minnesota in his freshman season. And then he comes to Oregon.
700. 699.
Okay. Yeah. So, and then he comes to Oregon and he puts up, I think it was 1,200 plus yards.
He put up, I was just looking at, 1050.
1050. Okay. So he's shown he goes over 1,000 yards, and to go over 1,000 yards in that Oregon offense when you've got Bo Nix also taking up a lot of running.
Yeah. I should clarify. I mean, rushing all up, he had like 1,400. Yeah.
Yeah. So for him to go over 1,000 yards in that offense is a really good thing. And the way they use him, they try and get him to the outside a lot to use that speed on the outside. I think he's comfortable in the passing game, like in the receiving game. They can use him as a weapon there. And they can use him as a pass blocker as well, which for his size, I think he's got pretty good power. So using him in the pass blocking game isn't a disadvantage, which is massive for him coming into the next level. And then I think he tried to bounce it outside too often, though.
Yeah.
I think that was his first thought, to bounce it outside, and I think he gave up a lot of plays doing that. But again, that's his game, so that's how he plays. So keen to see what NFL teams think of him, because I don't think he'll be a day 2 pick. I think he'll be more your 4th, 5th kind of round pick.
Yeah, he would. I've got him probably as like a 5th, 6th round pick.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you could see him go anywhere late 4th, all the way to even round 7.
Almost like a Juice Vaughn type from this year's draft gone by.
Yeah.
It's funny that you mention it. You were saying you were worried about his size, and you said he was what 5'10", 190.
I got him 194, so we're looking at a couple different sites, but yeah.
But even so, I mean, speaking of Juice Vaughn, last year he came into the combine. He was 5'5" and 179 pounds.
Is he that small? Oh my God.
He's one of the he's one of the shortest players in the NFL. He's 5'5". He's 179 pounds. But then if you also look at this last year's draft, Emmanuel Forbes, the cornerback, got drafted to Washington, and he's 6'1", 166 pounds.
Yeah.
So I don't think, and that's where I think these last couple of years have really broken the mold for a bunch of these NFL teams.
For sure.
Is that previously, like I think 20 years ago, no one would have drafted Kyler Murray number 1 overall at that size.
Yeah.
As a quarterback. You know, people were still saying like, you know, Drew Brees, is he going to be good because he's too short? You know, that was all coming through. Like, so I don't think that's as much of a size concern. Like a concern. Some teams will still have their thresholds that they need people to select. Like, you know, Green Bay is very with their wide receivers, they've got to meet certain thresholds, otherwise they won't look at them. So I think you'll have some teams who will have that sort of thing, but he will be, you know, I think it's not going to be as many teams who are worried about that as maybe what there was 20 years ago.
Brad, you're almost making me wish that we were doing a show on corners and safeties, because I know what you mean. It's like these like Tariq Woolen type, Sauce Gardner, like Lewis Seen, who was the Minnesota guy, Booth?
Andrew Booth Jr.
Andrew Booth as well. Like, yeah, they're all small. I think at corner you can get away with it because you need speed these days, is what people are learning. I do think at running back you do need like a little bit more size. But check out this with Bucky Irving last season. In the passing game, 3 catches, 30 yards, 3 catches, 57 yards, 3 catches, 61 yards. And that was against UCLA and Cal as well. And of course, like one of his most like well-known now highlight plays against Oregon State in week 12, that game on the line catch that he had out of the backfield towards the end was like insane. It'll probably go down as like one of the all-time catches from last season on the highlights reel. But I did want to mention Bucky Irving. And then the other guy we can't leave here without talking about as well, I thought, was Will Shipley out of Clemson.
I've got Will Shipley and Mayan Williams as well.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I don't have Mayan Williams, but I'm also like, I was maybe a bit late to it. I am willing to hear it as well. And that's from me, who watched a lot of Ohio State last season. Will Shipley, I sort of had a comp for him as like a smaller Austin Eckler at 5'11", 200. And before you go thinking, oh, great, Austin Eckler is awesome, he's like number 2 in fantasy, I'm talking Austin Eckler, undrafted free agent Austin Eckler was my comp for him. So yeah, just to don't get that confused. Nearly 1,200 yards last season, 15 touchdowns. He had a lot of goal line work in Clemson. We talked about the other week with DJ Ulangalele. Definitely some explosive long runs as well. The hurdle goal touchdown was cool to watch. I really enjoyed it. But man, he could not outrun any safety. I didn't, like, rarely, unless it was a busted coverage, I didn't see him outrun one safety. So I'll be interested to see how they go this season. Who's playing quarterback at Clemson again? I can't remember off the top of my head. I have to think about it. I'll come back to it.
I think.
But look, they're probably going to rely a lot on him in the run game. I think, like, you know, if you told me he was a 2nd-round pick, I believe it. And if you told me he was a 6th-round pick, I believe it.
Well, that's it. Like, at his size, you expect him to be faster, but he's just not.
Yeah.
Like you said,
exactly.
He doesn't run away from anyone. He's always getting caught.
Yeah.
Which is a massive concern for someone like him going to the next level. But where I think he stands out is he's probably, of the sort of top guys that you talk about a lot in your top 10 to 15 kind of thing, he's probably the best receiving back in the class from what I've seen so far. And I think that's where he's going to make his money in the NFL, is that receiving game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how they're going to use him in the running game. It's just, I don't know how he's going to translate to the NFL, but watching him at Clemson, he's highly rated for a reason.
Yep.
And like you say, he's got amazing patience, amazing vision.
Yep.
For his size, he's actually got really good power, I found.
Yep.
Which I was surprised about. I didn't expect that when I was watching him. So there is a lot to like about him, but I just don't know how his game's going to translate to the next level outside of the passing game.
Clemson quarterback is Cade Klubnik.
Oh, that's it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Klubnik. Yeah, okay.
Klubnik.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so he'll be the Clemson QB.
Yeah, didn't talk about him last week for a reason. Mayan Williams, did you want to just touch on him, Dan, for a brief moment?
Yeah, he's one of my favourite players to watch because he's just, like Brad was saying earlier about Brelan Allen, he's just violent. He just hits people. And it's awesome to watch. He's got the size. He's 5'9", 225 pounds. He has that speed to him. For his size, he's got good speed. It's not amazing, but it's good enough. He needs to be, I think, quicker in the short area game. But when you got that sort of power, he's impossible to wrap up. And then you look at him, what was I saying? He's got a little bit of wiggle to his run, not a lot.
Yeah.
But he just finds a hole and he hits it and he powers through it. And when I was watching him, I don't do a lot of comps at the moment to NFL players and that, but when I was watching him, it just reminded me of the way Dameon Pierce plays, where he's just violent. He hits a gap. He's hard to bring down. Like, you don't like tackling players like that. He's always breaking a tackle, getting to the second level. I just think it's going to be really interesting how NFL teams view him because he's that prototypical power back. And he can be used in the passing game as well. Like, I think he ran a fair few routes at Ohio State and he didn't look out of place when he was doing it. So I think he's got that to his game. So I think he can cover a fair amount of bases for an NFL team. And it'll be interesting to see how they view him come draft day. It'll be interesting to see how he tests come the combine, because I think that could make or break him big time.
Yeah.
So you look at him and Treveyon Henderson in the backfield, I think those two have the most amount to gain this year as far as draft capital goes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, this Ohio State team this season is going to be really interesting with Kyle McCord at quarterback, I'm assuming. But they're probably going to be more of like a run-first team at this stage. It will be Treveyon Henderson and Mayan Williams. And Ohio State's always produced good running backs, but I kind of see this more as a like a J.K. Dobbins and Trey Sermon sort of situation where, like, J.K. Dobbins was clearly more talented at the time, whereas I see Treveyon Henderson as a more talented Mayan Williams version, even though, like, he does look good in that system. I love your comp for, like, Dameon Pierce. I'd even say, like, Isaiah Pacheco. And the reason I sort of say, like, I see those two running backs very similarly because they're very, like, theatrical in their running. Dameon Pierce did not do a lot of what he did last year in college, and that's why I think a lot of people were like, whoa, where did this come from? And it's because it comes across more as theater than it does actual playing style. I don't see it overly sustainable, and I think it can become also, like, a bit predictable, and it's sort of what you're saying, like, they can sort of, like, dance around a little bit without actually just doing the job that they need to do. That's my only knock on Mayan Williams as well.
So what you're saying is Mayan Williams, when he gets into the NFL, will feature consistently on Kyle Brandt's Angry Run segment.
Yeah.
He'll be there weekly.
It'll be the angriest 2 yards you've ever seen.
But that's the thing. He's gonna have a highlight reel of angry runs, but maybe not necessarily hugely productive runs.
Well, I think the thing is with him, you're gonna have to feed him. Because the more ball he gets, the better he's going to be, because he's going to wear down the defense. Whether teams use a player like him in the NFL that way, I'm not sure. I don't think Ohio State will now either. But yeah, he's going to be that guy that wears down the defense, and he may not get the big plays out of it. The guy that comes in to spell him will be, but he's going to be the guy that just hammers players and just softens them up for that big play to come from someone else, probably, which is a shame. But
couple of other just final running backs to maybe like keep a single eye on here as we enter the 2023 season. I've got Trevor Etienne at Florida, might be worth watching. We didn't talk too much about Frank Gore at all. I think kind of for good reason, might also be kind of watching.
It's a tough one with him.
Yeah. Marshawn Lloyd, I was sort of looking a little bit. I'll be watching USC anyway, but I think it might be worth watching Marshawn Lloyd just a touch. Trey Sanders at TCU has been getting a little bit of late hype as well going into the season. But yeah, outside of that, I think there's a really good. Oh, and Noah Whittington, I also quite like out of Oregon as well. I'll be watching a good group of guys. And then there is sort of like a bit of a drop off. But like I was saying at the top of the show, I would not be surprised if someone that we didn't even talk about today just sort of shoots up and has this completely goes off this season, and we're all talking about him. So,
keep your eyes on Rasheen Ali from Marshall as well.
Oh, someone else was talking about him. I was watching a bit of late research as well. If I catch a Marshall game, I might look out for him as well.
Yeah, someone we'll talk about later in the year, I think.
Yeah, it could pop up. That's going to do it for running backs. Another fantastic show to look out for. And you know what I also really love about doing these is I feel like I'm doing homework, and now I'm going into the season like with a wealth of knowledge, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I've got my guys that I really want to watch. I've got my games that I know that I want to watch.
Definitely.
You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at John Lloyd Roberts. You can follow Brad at BradBowl1, and you can follow Dan on Twitter as well at Beard_82. And don't forget to follow, of course, NFL Lab Network on Twitter. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe. Dan, just give me 1 sec. No, actually, you go.
No, you finish off, mate.
Like and subscribe the video. I really want that. We've had a good boost in the last week. It's been really good. True Blue Bowl.
Yes, if you want to join a charity NFL fantasy league, hit me up on Twitter, like John said, at Beard_82. The True Blue NFL Charity Bowl is something that I've organised for this year. We got it underway last Sunday. We got it underway for the first league. I'm hoping to get a few more leagues up and running. We're trying to get a couple more leagues filled. If you want to jump into a best ball league for charity, this is your chance to do it. It's supporting Beyond Blue and also Black Dog Institute. I'm going to split the funds between those two foundations. Basically, they're directed towards mental health, which is a massive thing for me personally, and I know it is for a whole lot of other people as well. So I wanted to do something this year where I could raise money and spread that for everyone and just get everyone involved, or as many people involved as I can, for another charity league, which I love doing. I love joining charity leagues. So I thought, why not set one up, and hopefully we can get as many people into it as we can.
Nice. And guys, as well, you'll be seeing every Saturday. The Saturday Air Raid will be coming out, and keep your eye out. We've got some more shows that'll be coming soon. My show, the Brad Bolt Show, will start coming back soon. We're going to start looking at.
Oh yeah.
We're going to start looking at some divisions. We're going to start looking at some divisions, and this is going to be more focused on your NFL day to day as opposed to your fantasy. So if you'd like to hear something about your favorite team or the division or anything like that, we've got that. We're looking at having some big guests come on throughout the year. I can't say who yet. We'll keep that in. We'll keep that as a teaser for the season going forward. You'll be able to catch these guys. We've got other shows coming on. Dan's going to have one that's going to be coming out soon once the training camp sort of comes around towards the conclusion and we start getting close to the season.
Yep, focused on rookies during the season, so
look out for that. John's going to have a great little betting show that's going to be coming out soon. So if you'd like to try and win some money and just learn a little bit through.
Don't know about winning money.
But if you'd like to see a little bit of that, please keep your eye on everything. As John said, like and subscribe on these videos. Keep an eye out on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. And yeah, hopefully soon, you'll start seeing your feeds flooded with brand new shows from the NFL Lab Network.
Yeah, when it comes to betting, I don't like to say winning as much as I like to say I like playing the game inside of the game. Win or lose. Mainly lose. Hey, next week, wide receivers. If you thought quarterbacks was good, if you thought running backs this show was good, wide receivers next week is going to be awesome. There is a few good ones I'm excited for. Gentlemen, enjoy the weekend ahead. Thank you for joining me. Appreciate your time. We'll catch you next week.